Thanks again for being here. It matters showing up, even if it doesn't feel like it at times. Thank you for coming up and participating. Justin Swanson with the Midwest Hemp Council. We're a trade organization, been around since 2016, based out of Indiana. We have an awesome crew here today. We're going to leave some extra time at the end for Q&A, so please, if you do have questions throughout, make sure you save that for the end. And if not, I'm going to pick one of you out of the crowd, so be ready either way. I'm going to let the panel real quickly introduce themselves, and then we'll get right into it. Chris, why don't you start?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Christopher Ware, founder and owner of KCA Laboratories. We're based out of Kentucky. We're third-party analytical lab doing testing along the entire supply chain, from plants to products.
Bret Worley, CEO, founder of MC Nutraceuticals. We're based here in Colorado. We're the largest manufacturer and distributor of hemp cannabinoids in the world. And I'm also a board member of the American Healthy Alternatives Association, which is an advocacy group for cannabinoids and alternative products in the U.S.
I'm Bo Whitney, founder and chief economist at Whitney Economics. We're based out of Portland, Oregon. We do research and provide data on the cannabis space, either adult use, medical, or industrial. And I have clients practically on every continent now. So I help advise governments, operators, investors, and the like.
Great. As you can see, we got a great panel along the supply chain. Chris, one thing we hear quite a bit about is the need, for increased quality control standards and making sure we have, reasonable regulations in place for consumer safety. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of, having an established relationship with a lab like yours and the value you bring?
Certainly, and that's a primary goal of the lab. I built it to serve a purpose to educate our clients about the materials that they're selling and formulating with, and B, demonstrating that back to the consumers that these products are what they are what they're saying they are, and safe with a high rigor of contaminant testing, and really kind of building that back through our channels with the clients to educate them about what may or may not be an issue. It's our job to help guide that and be able to not just send a report, but interpret the data and help the customer interpret the data to improve products or build validity that their product is what it is, and cross-correlate that back again to the consumer on the educational and safety aspect. Yeah.
And Bo, you have a pretty unique perspective on, not just the hemp, but also kind of the rest of the cannabis industry. One thing I personally really enjoy about it, it's, the hemp industry and, is at the center of basically the intersection of policy, politics, and law. And so it can be exciting, it's exciting all the time. And I think everybody in this room has learned to view obstacles as opportunities, otherwise you probably wouldn't be here today. Bo, can you talk a little bit about kind of what the total addressable market looks like, and maybe the impact that policy, politics, and law has had on those numbers?
Yeah, sure. So I did a recent series of surveys of businesses and manufacturers and like in the cannabinoid space. Cannabinoids, either CBD, we looked at D8, D9, D10, HHC, and the like. And what was surprising about the results of the survey is that the market is substantially larger than people were giving it credit for. And so based upon our calculations, using the survey data, the midpoint of the forecast was $28.4 billion. And so for perspective, that's larger than the craft beer market. And so it's pretty substantial. And it's at $28.4 billion, it's actually about the same as all the legal sales of adult use and medical cannabis. Now, that's total potential market. And so it's important to understand that not all of that is through legal channels. In fact, some states prohibit this completely, the sales and distribution of it. And so as a result of that $28 billion of potential, 21 billion has been realized in actual sales, in legal sales. So it's pretty substantial. It's ramped very, very quickly.
Bo, I got a question for you. Why do you think it's ramped so quickly compared to, you know, if marijuana's been around for 12 years, 13, 14 years, why is hemp, you know, blown past that on a year-over-year growth trajectory?
Well, I think a lot of this was spurred on by the fact that the Farm Bill came about in 2018, and with the definition of hemp being anything produced from hemp is legal, then it opened up distribution channels that are not afforded by the marijuana industry. So for example, you can sell this in your grocery store, you can sell it at a shopping mall, you can sell it at a convenience store. I guess I'm supposed to be on stage right now.
Oh, is that capturing fiber and grain sector, hemp building materials as well?
No, that's just the cannabinoid sector.
Yeah.
And so the fiber and grain markets are actually substantially larger than that. And so, but a lot of the talk has been about cannabinoids, right? So, but by having these different distribution channels, then it gives consumers more access, and it's convenient. And people that don't want to necessarily go into a dispensary can go to their 7-Eleven and purchase these products. And so there's not that stigma. So there's a lot more participation by a broader spectrum, a broader demographic of consumers.
Real quick, want to give Vaughn an opportunity to introduce yourself real quick.
Sorry, I was told it was at the other building. Hi guys, my name is Vaughn, and I started off in the cannabis industry several years ago and came into the hemp space as I saw there was a lot of consumer demand for the therapeutic potential without the psychotropic properties in the plant. So we're really passionate about all different areas of this industry, and what I would argue is really plant revolution and stewarding in things in the right way.
Thank you. And maybe you can give some insight. I don't know if you have any experience on the international side or what you're seeing on across the way.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of exploration internationally right now. I think it's been interesting learning about the cultural influences, the different stances that each country is taking on how to properly roll out a cannabinoid problems or industry. Some looking at problems that we've dealt with in ours, others kind of taking it completely different direction. Like Germany's been really strict, which I appreciate. Australia's going through. You have to go through a pharmacy to get access, so it's been interesting seeing how each of the regions internationally are approaching. You know, it's a really nascent space in some ways, and in other ways we can learn a lot laterally from other controlled substances. So some people are doing that, some people aren't. But we still got a lot to learn. So
Yeah, Vaughn, I actually see that coming back through my business, which is, you know, sometimes it's not about demonstrating what your product is, but it's about demonstrating what's not in your product.
yeah.
You know, we run a highly expanded cannabinoid panel for people trying to get material into Japan. You know, basically CBD isolate, but it's including up to 30 or 45 cannabinoids that they know is not in there, but it's a requirement for the Japan ministry to demonstrate that those products are absent.
Chris, how many cannabinoids can you test for, since we brought up how many are in the plant?
Trying to quit, but we are, and you know, that's kind of you know, that's unique. I think we're up to 78 or maybe 80 or something like that. But that's you know, the industry pushes us. We push, you know, from an analytics standpoint, and we recognize that that's a need that we also need to develop. It's a challenge for the labs.
You know, one thing that I found interesting in these surveys is when I did these interviews of manufacturers and asked them about their testing protocols, they actually test the cannabinoids and the cannabinoid products more than the marijuana industry tests their products. And so there's generally 1 or 2 tests for adult use or medical products, but on the average it's about 3.9 to 4 tests during the whole process of developing these and deploying these products into the retail space.
You know, I think Colorado is kind of leading the way with that, with the safe harbor rules that go into effect. I think it's June 1 or July 1. Is, you know, all manufacturers that want to participate in the state have to be GMP, which is not a requirement under marijuana, which, you know, as people that are GMP is a pretty rigorous process that ensures compliance, you know, food safety and using third-party testing facilities to ensure they are selling what they say they're selling.
Bo, Germany was brought up. They've had some recent news. Any insight into what that market will look like or the opportunity there?
From cannabinoids, I don't quite have that. I'm working on that right now. But tomorrow I'm heading to Germany to talk about the rollout of the adult use market there. It's a pretty sizable market, roughly the size of, I think it's $7.8 billion of total addressable market there. So it's a pretty good sized market. And there's been lots of debate about how to do this and do it appropriately. And they've changed their policies a number of times, but finally they've got past several of the political hurdles and now are in the deployment phase of this. So it's a really exciting time. And Germany has the opportunity to create a wave of reform throughout the European markets.
Vaughn, we talked a lot about the consumer demand for this. Do you see in your interactions with the marketplace, are consumers getting more educated or asking better questions? What are you seeing out there?
That's great. I think one of the hardest things is consumers don't know who to trust. And being on the backside of this industry, I've learned so much myself just about how consumer packaged goods are handled. And you have a lot of marketing propaganda from businesses in the space. And there's not enough places that they can turn to really say, okay, this is factual information that's unbiased, that I can trust. That's something we're really pushing for and want to invite people across the industry to take a look deeper into that. I know the Hemp Roundtable is doing stuff. I was just talking with another regulatory body as well, but in the same way that, you know, we have the organic symbol. I think consumers don't want to be experts. They just want to know that there's an expert that they can trust. And right now, there's not a lot of clarity around who that is. There's a lack of research across many of these compounds. You know, some research has been done and proven therapeutic potential, but there's still an enormous amount of research that needs to be done. And you know, I really hope that we can come together as an industry and take what is a plant revolution and build trust with the consumers. When the CBD industry came online, and I first got into that side of things, you know, people were bragging at the trade shows that they were using isolate, didn't really know much about their products, and you had a lot of investment money coming in that wanted to mitigate their risk. It really wasn't about the consumer at all. It was about everybody trying to make a profit. And you watch this huge fallout as this compound, the trending compound that was sold as a panacea, really let a lot of people down, and not because it doesn't have therapeutic potential, but because it was mislabeled as what it could do. And then people were buying CBD products, and to them, CBD is CBD. They weren't understanding, you know, there's isolate, there's distillate, there's full spectrum. We as a company are really committed to live resin and whole plant extract. There's so much that we still need to learn about these plants. And we're really of the mentality of like keeping as much good in as we can, because nature is wise and we should stop trying to outsmart it. So just coming together and doing the research that's needed, trying to be more integrity driven as an industry. We're all here to make money, but doing that in an ethical way that doesn't put the consumer at risk and this whole industry at risk. You know, pharmaceutical has reigned supreme, and here we are at this intersection where psychedelics and not just the psychotropic properties, but all of the things that this plant has to offer is at the front of attention for the whole world. And let's not mess this up. Let's come together and create honest information, because the honest information is still profound and compelling. We need to create more places they can look to trust.
And transparency is paramount to all of what you just said. Those are great points, Vaughn. That's again, that's the onus of that is on ourselves, this industry, to demonstrate that back to the consumers and the regulators.
Altruistic capitalism. I'm here to promote it.
You know, in some studies, they've said that on the adult use and medical side, that 85 to 90% of consumer decisions for purchases are influenced by the bud tender. And so there's this direct advocacy of a product to a consumer. There's a lot of education that can be bestowed if you're a good bud tender. There's just not that direct contact with the cannabinoid consumers, and that's unfortunate. So it's kind of incumbent upon us to help put data out there, help put information out there on these products and their benefits.
Yeah, and we're oftentimes the bearer of bad news, because sometimes you may not like the results you get back from us, but it's the onus comes back to them making a decision with that data, not ignoring it, and
Can I say one more thing? I think one of the things that I see as a real big linchpin for us as an industry is, you as the lab, there's these potency demands that we're all forcing down your throat. Everyone's shopping for the highest potency test, and the consumer doesn't really understand what matters and what questions to ask. That's all they're left with, and they don't understand the testing equipment, interpretation of those results, and really, frankly, if you blind taste 25 and 30% at independent times, you're not going to know the difference. So they're asking their own questions, and I feel really the most onus, if there's any retailers in the rooms, I really, really want to challenge you guys as kind of the Marines on the front line, interfacing with the consumer, because as much as I've spoken with cultivators and people across the supply chain that want to do right, like the people touching the consumer, it starts there and it works backwards towards everyone. And we're all kind of responding to how you're interfacing with the consumer, and if they're teaching and promoting education, not only is it solidifying you with a value profit, like, hey, this is somebody I can trust, they're not just going to sell me something, but they know what they're talking about, which really stands out, but then it allows people in the back end of the supply chain to do the right thing too, versus pinching a penny in half because we're trying to fight for that market share that's controlled a lot by the consumer interaction with retail.
Bret, and you see that going through what you do with your customers.
Yeah, we get to see the consumer demand from a high level, and I think the retailer is confused to a certain extent. But my opinion on it is as we make many pure isolated compounds, is part of the education is through the consumer getting to try different products. So although it's not the perfect model, allowing the consumer to choose on their own and try out different cannabinoids that might work differently for them, non-psychoactive ones including THCV, CBG, CBD, CBDA, CBGA. I think it's nice to be able to at least give them the opportunity to purchase these cannabinoids, because we get to see a grandiose scale. The good news is the consumer does want this product, and that helps all of our businesses thrive. And then on the back end, they get to educate themselves, and we get to obviously do our best of educating through our channels that we have. So my goal is to educate people on what CBN does, or THCV does, or Delta 8 THC, or whatever it is. So I like the ability to have ease of access, ease of use. If you want to order it, as long as you're over 21 years old, you're welcome to order it online, or you're welcome to go down the street and pick it up without waiting 35 minutes to talk to a bud tender.
Bret, given your position, where do you see the market headed in 3 to 5 years, or what assuming everything goes right on the Farm Bill and all that? Where do you see the market headed?
Yeah, I think marijuana and hemp are on a crash course. I think it's being expedited through the beverage channels, and bringing the two industries together. There's still a little bit of infighting, but I think a lot of the infighting is going away due to the crossover with cannabinoids and with the beverage sector. So I expect there to be a little bit of consolidation, probably starting in 2025, including merging. We already see a lot of big MSOs getting into either the Delta 8 space, or buying CBN or CBC or whatever these cannabinoids are. So there's going to be a huge overlap in 2025. There's going to be a consolidation event, and the people that have the best product and the best distribution are going to end up being the players that are going to be around in the next 3 to 5 years.
What I find really interesting about the intersection between the marijuana market and the hemp market on the cannabinoid sector is that as much as the marijuana market is trying to bash the hemp market, they're making hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue off of the hemp products. and through white labeling and the like. So there's already a lot of crossover going on right now. And so I think, yeah, there will be some consolidation. And just a little plug, I'm putting out a survey and doing some research on the beverage market now that you mention it. And so I'm looking at the marijuana beverages, the hemp-derived beverages, doing a total addressable market for both, and then merging them together into one consolidated cannabinoid forecast. I think it's starting to become more and more important to view this as an ingredient rather than trying to have this line of demarcation between marijuana and hemp.
Yeah, that's how we look at it. This is an ingredient, and contract manufacturing and the brand, they're the ones that get to put it in cool products like beverages or vapes or gummies or any type of products alike. So at the end of the day, these cannabinoids are ingredients. They all do different things, just as different ingredients do, and we should treat them as such. So again, pushing GMP requirements, sensible regulations across the country, I think is very important for the hemp industry and the cannabis industry, the marijuana industry alike, to all get on the same page of this. Make sure the consumers get high quality material and make sure it's easy for them to get it.
Yeah, one particular interesting thing about the drink market, the beverage market is, you have established distributors on the alcohol side who, more and more reports and data coming out showing that, younger people are drinking less and less. And so it's a good opportunity for those guys, that marketplace, to kind of chase their existing customer to new demands. We have about 10 minutes left. I'd love to see if there's any questions in the audience. If not, like I said, I'm going to pick on somebody. So any questions for the panel? Sir.
Hi. It seems like, I could just speak for it that way. I think it seems like just the cultivation aspect is the main
Good one anyway.
How's that? Good. It seems like there's the cultivation aspect, the manufacturing aspect, and then the final retail product aspect. And the cultivation is pretty well addressed through the Farm Bill. The retail side is absolutely a mess throughout all the states. But what about that unfinished hemp product in between? Do you think that there's regulations that should be directed specifically towards that? Or do you think that solving the end, the retail product, will kind of have a backwards effect on this?
I guess that's for me. The state of Colorado has done a good framework, although I don't agree with the restrictions on retail sales. The work and process material or the raw materials, my business is again treating them like ingredients, food ingredients, making sure they're pure, make sure you have internal testing, third-party testing, and then making sure that it's a clean, safe working environment. So, I think Colorado's done a good job of it on the manufacturing side, although the retail side might be lacking. But the manufacturing piece is very simple. And this framework is required under DSHEA for nutraceuticals. Is you have to be a CGMP company, and that solves most of the problems, because that's all the DSHEA Act does for nutraceutical products is require that your inputs are pure and tested.
And have a lot of paperwork.
And a lot of paperwork.
Yeah, and
trails.
to what you're saying, on the retail side, they can stop maybe somebody underage from consuming, but definitely on the back end, on the lab side, some of the scarier things that I've seen is that people are processing with compounds that aren't even tested for. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're right.
And so I've gotten downvoted by many Reddit trolls trying to spread the gospel. So I give up, but it's real. It's like, hey, a passing COA doesn't mean there's not carcinogenic compounds in this product. And I'm really, really concerned about this. Us as a manufacturer, again, we take a margin cut to put full live resin in our products, to full panel test, batch test, do things the right way and set precedents and really raise the bar for our industry and try to educate everyone. It's tough because, again, consumer demand and education kind of drives behind the scenes. Like, it's been an uphill battle for us selling products the right way and spending way more money on putting them together, when you have a lot of these mass market brands that are like, they want to argue over $5 off a kilo. And so as consumers get sophisticated and create that demand, like, we do need to regulate and kind of push that, but it comes from regulation, it comes from consumer demand, all the things. But there are ethical businesses in the space, but certainly a lot of things happening behind that wouldn't be at the point of sale that need to be controlled for consumer safety, and more toxicology research on these compounds. But that's not just our space. You know, we just came from Unpacked where it was all about cannabis, and it's like, hey guys, you know, it's us against them, but it's like, no, we're all in this plant medicine space. These are the same compounds, and it's just a mess, as much of a mess on that side as it is this. I've seen heinous things on both sides of the industry, being in cannabis and now in hemp. So it needs cleanup across the board. But the linchpin becomes like investments and costs for these businesses. It's not justified by the point of sale price sometimes. So it takes us coming together as a whole.
So for some of those work in progress, you know, stages, I don't really see the value in that, in clamping down on that, because then you would have to, if you want to treat all industries and ag products equally, then you'd have to clamp down on corn and soy and all this other stuff. So to me, it doesn't make sense to treat, you know, hemp or intermediary stages of products any differently, right? Because it just adds cost, and it doesn't really do anything to increase public safety or anything like that.
So I think one of the many great things about the industry that we're in, with a lack of regulations, is kind of to your point, Bret, around like consumer choice and access and like research that can be done to collect this data. You know, you don't have the relationships that a lot of the call it marijuana marketplaces do, where third-party testing is rigorously and strictly controlled, so that you're not getting the questions that you're calling out are really important to be asking. Just because it's 13 pesticides, like, are we missing the other 7? Are we missing the one that we're not testing for, or carcinogen? That's really important. So I think when you translate it back to the consumer marketplace, you know, creating these new cannabinoids, whether it's THCO or otherwise, it's one thing to create those. 2, we have to test for the purity, but then 3, at what point, what level of research should be done before they just are allowed out of the marketplace? Like, is it fair to say, consumer, you have the choice to consume this product and see how you feel, when there's been 0 research done on the safety and toxicology of it? What's the minimum barrier of research that should be done before a company can create a new molecule and put that out to the marketplace? Is there an answer? I'd love to hear how that works.
I think laterally in a lot of industries, shellage, all these things, there's all kinds of stuff out in the marketplace that hasn't had the studies that it needs to. So it's bigger than our industry, right? And it's not that we can't be stewards and lead it the right direction that it needs to be, but it's very expensive, right? And our incentives as a society is like, where's the money that's paying for all this? So that becomes the problem, I see. For us to really do the work that needs to be done is finding somebody that benefits enough to pay those bills. I don't know if you guys feel differently, but.
Yeah, I mean, you know, what we've done in my company specifically is you know, we've just taken insight from the food and nutraceutical industry. So, you know, any type of, you know, solvent that's used is also used in chili extraction, for example. Or, you know, PTSA is used or generally regarded as safe by the Canadian Health Authority. So, you know, there's a bunch of examples that can be used to show that the processes to make these cannabinoids are safe and generally regarded as safe. And then on top of that, you then have the cannabinoid itself. So is it a phytocannabinoid? Is it found in the plant? You know, if it's found in the plant, you know, you can make a bioidentical at scale. You know, I think it's highly valuable, as, you know, 99% molecules, you know, from the plant. You know, generally, I think we would all believe that they're safe. If the plant makes them, people have been consuming them for thousands of years. So that's, you know, the goal and the journey of it all is you know, putting that genie in the bottle when it's too far, while still exploring the consumer demand and the science behind the plant.
Yeah, stay whole plant. While there's still a lot to discover, is, I hope, the takeaway for a lot of this industry, because we do have a lot of research to do. And you look at sucralose, I hope that's the right one, right? 10 years later, it's like some of this stuff takes, in these other industries, 10, 20 years for people to come back and say, whoops, that wasn't the safest thing. Cigarettes, recommended by doctors. There's a more common example. So it's not just our industry, it's consumer goods in general. There's a lot of things that make it out into the marketplace that shouldn't be consumed, and it's very expensive. I'm hoping that the advent of AI, there's a lot of things that now they're using computational models to be able to advance things and overcome these economic barriers to this research that needs to be done, not only in our industry, but across all the things that humans are consuming. But when in doubt, stay natural. You know, we tend to mess things up. Nature does less of that. So while we're figuring it out, stick to whole plant.
And in this industry, there's, you know, I think that mechanism can be done in parallel, because at the end of the day, the consumer demand is there. They're going to want, you know, so if they're not allowed to get what they're wanting to consume because the research hasn't been performed, then that drives it underground, and that's where it becomes a much more dangerous product. I see that coming back through my lab. That's where I see some of the stuff that, if it were elevated through regulation and not prohibition, then that builds back for the consumer safety aspect.
So in 2017, I spoke in Berlin at a conference, and I was announcing some of the results from consumer surveys on why they use cannabis. And the day prior, this researcher called Dr. Meshulam was presenting, and he was presenting all of his findings on his clinical trials and studies. And what I realized at the time is that the reasons why people were using cannabis mirrored exactly the positive effects that cannabis was having on the human body, which were being affirmed by Meshulam at the time, but hadn't been finalized because he was still in these trials. And so in this sense, I had this epiphany that the consumers were ahead of the science on the use of cannabis. And so I found that very, very fascinating, and something that I wanted to share today as well.
Probably have time for one more quick question.
I don't know if I have a mic. Oh, there we go. Good afternoon. Thank you for all that information. My name is Judith Ledbetter. I'm the owner and CEO of a retail cannabis dispensary in Boston. And this is our first hemp conference. Our business model is really centered around wellness. I have 20 years of healthcare experience, and it's really been guiding how we move forward. Is there anything that you could suggest or resources that we could start to integrate into our business plan while we're under construction to really help bridge the gap of education with our consumers? We live in a community, majority of color, majority of elderly people. We want to really start to educate the people in that community and push them more towards the wellness component of the cannabis industry and kind of merge the two.
So as a retailer, do you work with a testing lab to test your products coming out of your store? Or
No.
so that's an example. You're relying or trusting on your supplier's information that has been given to you. And I think we touched on it earlier. We would encourage you to spot check the material that they're giving you to show that it is what it is. That's where we see a lot of the gap that comes in from where, again, at the retail burden that you do, that you may not be aware is being provided from your back end.
So in some retailers in the adult use and medical space, they have kiosks and information kiosks. And so you can go up to a terminal and see all of the products that are listed at the dispensary. And then you can look at the COAs, the testing materials, the source of the raw materials that went into the products. And there's a lot of information there. And it keeps your customers in your space a lot longer because they're doing the research. But then you also get that consumer education. You get to promote the suppliers into your shop and the like. So it's kind of a win-win from a consumer information perspective and from a marketing perspective of your suppliers.
So I was in cannabis genetics, and then I couldn't stand the red tape, and I opened a retail in CBD. And when I got into that space, I had people coming in with pain. $60 was a lot of money for some of these people, and I felt a responsibility as a retailer, not just to sell them whatever, So I had to take that onus on myself to be ethical, as I appreciate that you're doing, and say, okay, I created a vendor, approval process that I put all of my products through to understand. Were they compound formulating? Were they using the best inputs? Did they actually know how to put a product together? Were they just putting things in a jar that they didn't really understand? I probably tried 60 salves and creams to look for something that would work, and none of them passed my test. And so it does take a lot of work, and I understand that some people for that reason don't want to put that effort in, but as a retailer in what is arguably a very crowded space, I would challenge that it's such a huge value proposition for standing out and building loyalty. And so while it does take a lot of work because we don't have a North Star as an industry we can really trust for research, there is research out there, and I've dug through too many PubMed articles. I'm desperately trying to remember this one resource, if anyone knows what it is. It was like CBD something. And I'll think of it and try to confine you. But there is some like doctor-backed online places. Sleepwell is a pretty decent, they do a good job, like where you can see they're being pure, they have doctors and people signing off on the things they're saying. They're not just a brand trying to spin something to benefit what they're trying to sell. So just look for a doctor's signature on online things and look at some research and take it and run it through ChatGPT because some of it's a little thick. But yeah, challenge your vendors to be ethical and do things the right way and over-communicate. And there's a lot of good people out in this space. We make, shameless plug, we make products across good, better, best categories, and we passionately provide education to the retailers we work with whenever, if that's point-of-sale materials that consumers can take home and read to learn about how the compounds work, product form factors, inhaled versus edibles, why there's a benefit. And ultimately, this brings your store more money, When you can explain to somebody that comes in for pain that they might want an edible because it's a 4 to 6 hour time span, so it's more cost effective. But when you're in pain, you need something instant. So an inhalable pill paired with that, it brings you and the consumer value to get sophisticated and getting to know. And there is information out there, but unfortunately, there's a lot of SEO optimized articles at the top of things. You need to look for doctor signatures on that information to make sure that you're passing on correct things to consumers.
Thank you so much, and how about a random applause for our panel? We got to wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for your insights and willingness to share.